I'm going to show a few nice attacking games of Topalov, because I've been working with him for several years, from 2010 till 2014, and I like many of his games. So we will start with one victory over Kasparov, a game that was played in 1996. It's a very nice game that I like to call the Night Dance. You will soon understand why. So, it was Sozin attack, bishop c4, all this is theory. So of course, bishop e6 is very tempting, but it's well known that it is a little bit too early, so this is a normal move. And the main move here, or at least at the time, was queen f3 to protect the e4 pawn. But here Topalov decided to sacrifice the pawn and to try to take a lead in development. Knight takes e4, knight takes, and now f5. So Topalov tries to open the position, which of course Kasparov cannot allow, so e5. Queen h5, threatening mate on f7. Queen e7 was played in the game. d5 might actually be the best move, although it's a little bit counterintuitive to push the central pawns when the king is behind, but actually it frees the f8 bishop as well, and rook e1 is supposed to be the move here. Pawn takes d4, rook takes e4 would be very bad for black, since you cannot take the rook, of course. So bishop c5, rook takes e4, and actually here they used to play like this, and this was another game of Topalov when white had very reasonable compensation for the exchange, but the simplest here might be after rook takes e4 to just castle. Since rook e5 there is bishop d4. And okay, this is actually a very unclear position. Bishop c3, bishop h6, this is very unclear. Anyway, Kasparov chose queen e7. Topalov went back, queen f3. Just a second. So e takes d4 would be a huge mistake here because of rook e1 and the knight cannot be defended. Knight to c5, so black wants to take this b3 bishop, which is the strongest white piece, and is also threatening to take the knight on d4 now. So here Topalov found a very nice way to avoid both problems. I mean, not losing the knight and not allowing black to trade his knight for the b3 bishop. So can you guess Topalov's next move here?
Maybe knight c6?
Yeah, knight c6, black played queen c7, and then?
Then I have to think again.
So, try to...
Bishop d5 maybe?
Yes, exactly, that's the way. He could have played simply knight b4 to get the knight to d5, but actually black would have a very nice position here with bishop b7 to follow. So bishop d5 to keep the pressure. Here, black could have just played bishop d7, and that would be some nice positional compensation for black. For example, castle would be lost after rook f3 and then rook h3. That would be a terrible attack. Black should play something like this, and this is obviously a nice compensation for white. So Kasparov thought he should try to punish Topalov for putting his pieces in such a way, and he played a5 to take the last available square from the c6 knight.
Maybe he wants to play rook a6, something like that?
Rook a6 or bishop d7 and just take the knight. Bishop g5 was played by Topalov, a very nice move actually, just threatening knight d8. If f6 there is queen h5, which is very annoying. Actually here Kasparov blundered. He played rook a6, and after knight d8 he was just lost. He had to play f6, Knight f7, rook g8. Actually, for white is only a pawn down, so now bishop e3. And this is why I call this game the knight dance, because the knight went from g1 to g5, but actually through not just through f3, but through g4, c6, d8, f7. And white is actually winning material here. Black played rook g7, takes, and Kasparov sacrificed his queen, but obviously his position was just lost. So actually the most interesting to see in that game is what would happen in case of bishop d7. So can you try to guess white's next move after bishop d7?
Take on f7, I think.
So taking on f7 is not working.
Not working.
This actually has been played once by Grandmaster Jean-Marc de Grave, a French Grandmaster. He played like this, but actually after bishop e8 he was just lost, because f7 is controlled too many times and knight e7 is queen e7. And takes, just takes, and the rook is protecting the bishop. So bishop f7 is not working. One reasonable possibility would be f6, because if black takes, then this would be extremely done. Bishop f7 would come, and that would be very bad for black. So probably g6 then would be played, and now the knight would have an available square on e7. But that position would just be quite unclear. So there is a move that is much nicer after bishop d7. Can you try to find it?
Maybe come back with the knight. Again.
Come back where?
d4.
That would be possible, maybe, but he found something. Knight d4, maybe f6 then, and he found something more aggressive here.
Take on e5 and then f7.
Well, that would not really change much. Oops. That would be
something like knight e5, no? So, sorry, queen d5.
Yeah, but I would just go back.
Rook f e.
Yeah, the problem is you sacrificed many pieces.
Yeah, I'm not in time to.
Yeah, you might collect one, although I'm not sure I'll play rook a6.
Yeah, too many pieces sacrificed.
Yeah, so try to find another move.
Okay. Knight e7, and when he takes, f6.
So actually knight e7, yes. But after taking, not f6 right away, that would be a little bit too slow. First take. And white wants to push f6, and that would be terrible for black. Then the king would go somewhere, but fg7, that would be just winning for white. So black here needs to play f6, and black goes queen g4, threatening to take on g7. And now there is only one move to save the game. Can you try to find it?
Knight e6 with the check on f5, on c5.
No, because knight e6 I will play f6, and then you can check me, but I'll play king h1, and g7 is still hanging, d7 is hanging.
Yeah, I will lose the rook on h8.
Yes. So, not knight e6.
Queen to b6.
Queen b6, just king h1, you're not really improving your situation.
Because I don't like g6.
No, g6, you just bishop f6. This is very bad. So this is a good exercise because there is really only one move. Like one move is about equal and the rest is like +4 for white. So it's...
So the bishop go to e6.
Yes, bishop b6 only move, with the idea that after queen g7 there is rook g8. And this is kind of fine for example, takes. I mean, white has compensation, but it is not so clear. Other moves are just losing. So this was the first game. So I don't know what.
Where did you say what's played?
So black played rook a6, as I told you.
Yeah, but where?
That was played in. I think it was in Amsterdam, if I'm not wrong. Yes. So, but okay. In the game, rook a6 was played. So after bishop d7, definitely. Perhaps Kasparov has been afraid of bishop f7. At least he saw something, because this is just such a mistake. He was afraid of. He probably saw some ghost, or maybe he saw everything after knight e7, and was afraid to go for it. But by the way, f6 is a possibility as well. And then how do you continue as white?
I suppose I have to check.
Okay, check, I take.
Go on f7.
So this is a mistake, because then I can just run away. So actually you need to take on f6 first.
Nice.
And gf6, now you take the rook and everything is fine. If king f6, obviously you get mated, or queen f7 should be mating, but this is even simpler, just opening everything, and that's gonna be a mate very soon. So that was the first game. Now I will show one game against Ponomarev that was played in Sofia in Bulgaria, 2005. So I will close the notation. So the opening we don't care too much. Black played c6, so that's a typical move to play d5 and avoid. I mean, if black plays d5, then white takes cd and bishop g2. So black, that's one possible move, to play c6 with the idea to go d5 and take back with a c pawn on d5. The problem is, of course, now e4 becomes possible. d5, e5, knight e4. Now Topalov played bishop d3, although he played g3. Normally you go to g2 with the bishop, but now the position has changed so much that the bishop is better on d3. So there was one game of, I think it was Carlsen, who played like this against Van Velde. He tried to play something very symmetrical, but actually black is much worse here, because due to the c file, so Van Velde actually beat Carlsen in Tata Steel in that position. Ponomarev in the game rather took on c3, rook c3. So we're not worried about bishop b4 because positionally this exchange is quite good for white. I mean the central pawns are on dark squares, so normally white is happy if he can exchange the dark squared bishop. So black reacted in the center with c5. White took on c5. Here it would have been interesting for black to sacrifice a pawn, say play d4. Now white is returning bishop e4 and just something like bishop b7. And if you take on b6, a b6, and there are some compensations for black. Even bc5 would not be so bad, and just sacrifice an exchange and play on the light squares. But Ponomarev was a little bit too pragmatic, and he took back with the pawn on c5, and Topalov started to launch an attack with h4. So for example, now d4 would be a very big blunder. Why?
Thinking about taking on h7.
Yeah, now you can take on h7 and knight g5 and then queen h5, and that's going to be a disaster for black. Actually the best move would have been g6 here, but it's a bit counterintuitive again to play g6 when h5 is coming. It looks quite pleasant for white, but actually it is not that clear, the position. So I don't know if h5 here or cd5. Anyway, that would have been another game. Instead, white played h6. So how do you think Topalov continued this attack here?
He sacrificed on h6.
No, that would be a little bit early. Then I would take on I would take back and play king g7 maybe. Well, even bishop h6, actually that could be dangerous for black, but he did something much simpler.
Okay.
Just reorganizing his pieces.
Maybe move the bishop back to b1.
Exactly.
And then try to...
That's what he did, to play queen c2.
Uh-huh.
So black was afraid, obviously, because if he plays d4 now, Topalov doesn't mind about his rook on c3, is just gonna sacrifice in h6, and that's not gonna be fun for black. So f5 was played, ef6, bishop f6, queen c2 anyway. If bishop c3, just bishop takes, and for example d4, that's going to be, if king g8, then knight e5, taking the f7 square. And then queen h7 is coming. If king is 7, then for example there are very nice lines like this. cd4. It's funny because the person who just passed actually was a second of Topalov at the time of that game.
I don't think...
Cheparinov.
At this time of this game?
He was, yes. So that there could be fun lines like this, and then king e8, queen g8, the f7 rook will be lost. That could have been another way the game could finish. This move knight takes d4 is quite nice. So black did not dare to take the rook, he played d4. Indeed, the bishop on f6 is a quite important piece to defend the position. So how do you think white continued this attack here?
Knight g5?
Yes, you're guessing all Topalov moves. Very nice. So it's returning mate in 1, so basically you have to take it.
I follow him in Linares, because I'm from Linares, so I saw him a few times, so I know a little bit of his style.
His style, yeah, knight g5. This is a typical Topalov move indeed. hg5, simply. D takes c3. And here if I press next, it's going to show the next move. Here I think the direct way, rook h8 check, you cannot take the rook. The direct way should be winning for white, for example like this, and just take. And actually it's only a rook, and you're threatening check on e4. You're threatening check here. Also, if the king goes there, there will be mate here. So that's just a disaster for black. But Topalov did not play rook h8. He played another move here. Can you try to guess it?
Queen g6 with the same idea.
So Queen g6. The problem is, I think that would be a little too much because of Queen d2.
Yeah, it's not working.
And then Queen d1 and Bishop b7.
Maybe he just moved the bishop.
Yes, he just played Bishop f4.
Because it's treating the same idea.
Now,
Queen g6.
exactly. Queen g6 is a terrible threat. So black played king f7, running away with the king, check, takes, and now obviously it's going wrong for black. King d6, so black is trying to survive. Well, he has an extra rook and both queens are hanging, but actually white is winning in a very simple way here, just taking and rook h7.
No development, so
and there is actually no perpetual check. Black can try to give checks, but the king is gonna run to g2 and then there will be no more checks, since b7 is controlled
mate on c7.
and there is a mate on c7. So to avoid the mate on c7, black played queen e5 check and king c6. But now, well, Topalov relocated his queen and now deviated the defender with bishop b4 check, and it's queen c7 mate on the next move.
Very nice game.
Yes. Yes. So next one from the same tournament, this time against Anand. So the same opening more or less. First moves are exactly the same, but I think castle was played in the previous game. Yes, now we played c6 right away, and Topalov played e4 right away, d5, and I assume there are some differences because here Topalov played queen c2. Black took everything, took on e4 and played bishop b7, and knight eg5. This was Topalov's novelty at the time, obviously with ideas like knight e5, but also ideas like taking on f7. For example, that would be. I mean, actually, look at the black pieces. This is you don't need to calculate until mate here. Look at the black pieces. It's clear that there are huge compensations. So Anand reacted in the best way here. He played c5. So can you guess Topalov's next move?
Bishop g2?
No, something much more aggressive.
Much more aggressive. he sacrificed on f7?
Not yet.
Okay.
So knight g5, then h1 would be hanging. It would be a little bit too much. This bishop on b7 is a little bit annoying.
I wanted to play 95, 96 on d5, but I think it's not enough. Because he can even take on d5.
Actually, he did play d5. Because now it's not so easy. There is not a single capture on d5 that is good. Here, check, for example. And if you go bishop c6, there are some ideas like this.
I didn't see the bishop d5 idea.
Yeah, bishop b5 is a very annoying idea, and then knight e5. Queen d5, there is bishop c4. Bishop d5, there is just long castle, and actually if black tries to castle, then bishop c3, for example, threatening to take on f6 and mate on h7. Also bishop c4 is coming, just a very bad position for black. So black cannot afford to take on d5, and castling, which looks very healthy, would probably be a bad idea because bishop c3 is coming, and now that you castled, every time you play h6 I will just play h4. And then you will have huge difficulties getting rid of this knight on g5. So Hanan did not have much of a choice, and he had to accept the challenge and force Topalov to sack his knight on f7. Which Topalov did, obviously, and now Topalov calmly played long castle. He's not hurrying to give a check to his opponent. He wants perhaps to open the position with d6 and then bishop c4 check, stuff like this. So here Anand played the best move again, bishop d6, just stopping the d pawn. And black is very happy with this pawn on d5 because it's closing that diagonal. I have problems with this new chess base. I'm still on chess base 13 and I'm very happy with it. I have a feeling every time the new version is worse. So
Great advertisement for chess base. Yeah.
What?
Great advertisement for chess base.
Yeah, well.
But what do you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I also don't like in the notation that all these diagrams are. I mean, why do you? I mean, it takes like half of the page.
Oh, but it's my Windows.
I mean,
I don't think there's nothing to blame chess base for.
I mean, look at this.
Oh God.
I mean, I don't think this diagram is helpful here anyway. We're in chess base, so we have the big diagram on the left. So why to take all this space?
Yeah.
So it started from chess base 14, so I stayed on 13.
Once I joined the Kasparov lecture or like a training, he
Yeah.
was using chess base 9 or earlier.
That's a bit too much, maybe. Okay, so knight h4, Topalov played to go queen g6, bishop h3, knight f5. Again, the best move by black, bishop c8, preventing bishop h3 and preventing knight f5 ideas as well. So Anand is defending very well. On the other hand, look at the black pieces, he's just putting his pieces back to the 8th round. This is not such a good sign. So here, Topalov found a very nice way to continue attacking, and actually he found you're going to try to guess his move, and the hint I will give you is that he made the d5 pawn become very useful.
Rook e1 to rook e6.
Exactly. Rook e1. So he wants, for example, now if the rook moves somewhere, then he wants to check and take there, simply. So it's dangerous for black to move the rook. You can move it to e8 as well, but this is also, I mean, rook e6 is coming, bishop h6 is coming. So Anand here played knight e6, which is a very decent move. He wants to go knight b4. He wants to trade some pieces and open the c5, so that definitely makes sense. Rook e6. So black is definitely not afraid of bishop e6 then. Well, now bishop a6 it would be there, but even without that, bishop c4 check or queen f5, that would be a tremendous attack. So black cannot afford to take this rook. He also cannot afford to take the d5 pawn, I think, because of perhaps check and bishop c4, and no, there is rook d6 actually here. Yeah, so that would be a disaster. So black actually cannot touch anything. So he played knight b4. That's again the best move. Here it would have made sense to check and just develop. That would have been one option. And it's a very unclear game. For example, if black tries to be brave and take with the idea e7, knight d5, is just this position is just very bad for him. But b5 would be interesting, just to deviate the bishop and then take on d5, attack the rook on e6, and there would be, for example, the engine is giving crazy lines like this, and the position is about unclear. I mean, it's two pieces for a rook, a7 is gonna fall, that's just, but black is active, that's just unclear. Topalov instead decided to take on b4, and now Anand is probably hoping that Topalov would just collect the piece back, queen c6, attacking the bishop and the rook, and then black could play something like this, and then rook c8, and actually it would be black who would be on the attack now. So Topalov did not want that, and he played bishop c4. And black, well, this bishop on c4 is perfect, but the only problem is at one point black will be able to play b5, and it's gonna win one important tempo on the bishop. And actually Anand did it right away, but he should not have done it right away, because it's a bullet that you have only once. And then the bishop goes back to c4, and then you do not have another pawn to go to b5. So it should actually have played king g8 here, according to the engine. And for example, knight f5, now it's time for b5.
Because the queen is not going to g6.
Yeah, king g8, I mean, it's prophylactical against queen g6 and knight f5, because obviously the rook on e6 is allowing knight f5 as well. And yeah, that could have been, that's a computer line, b5, rook takes, queen f8. So the bishop is hanging, and black is also threatening to take on f5 and then take on d6. And there could be some crazy lines like this that the engine gives, and that's probably around equal. But of course that's computer stuff. b5 is much more human, so you get rid of this bishop on c4. The problem is if you go to g8, the bishop will just go back to c4, and I don't think you will ever be able to take that rook on e6. Bishop e7 was played in the game. Topalov here played something slightly imprecise. So he could have, well, he played something very human but slightly imprecise. So try to think for a minute and tell me what you would play if you were.
Human one, or
just tell me what you would play.
Will be maybe coming with the other rook.
That's human. Yeah. Okay, take say 1 or 2 minutes and tell me what move you would play. Have friends messaging me like, has the lecture started and so on. I'm telling them yes, but then I say, okay, I'm finishing my billiard game. Humiliation. So, what would you
I
play?
like rook H-E1.
So you like rook H-E1. Did I mention this in my analysis? Let's put the notation back. Actually, I had you from the wrong position. Because the next move. No, actually, I don't know about rook H-E1. Do you have? Okay, let's see what Stockfish says. I don't know if rook H-E1 would be a decent. I mean, rook H-E1 looks very interesting to me as well. I'm pretty sure. Okay, black has to take and go to G8. But okay, see, the engine understands that the compensation is enormous. So actually, I think rook E1 is a very good move as well. Instead, okay, let's stop this and close the notation as well. So actually, Topalov played knight G6 here. Knight takes D5. And I think here Topalov took he took rook E7. That would be a much more precise move. That would be very simple. It was a very simple. I mean, you cannot do more simple. Rook E5, just to threaten rook takes D5 and bishop C4, and it would just be game over. You're attacking H8. You're attacking everything, and there could be very nice mating lines like this.
Because you give also the E6 square for the king.
Yeah.
For the king.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you don't have another way to defend the knight, and if you move the knight, rook E7 is coming. So rook E5 would be game over. Topalov took on E7. He probably thought that was also completely winning. He played bishop C4 check. Rook D1 would also make a lot of sense. But anyway, he played bishop C4 check. And now probably underestimated king F6, which was played by Anand. If bishop E6, then simply knight E7 and rook E1 next, and you're going to collect. You're going to collect the material back, and the black king is very weak, so your position, white's position, is great. And if bishop C4, then white is gonna checkmate black somehow. Actually, you just play like this. You're rook down. You're not giving checkmate maybe, but you will play rook E1 and then rook D1. You're gonna win the queen. And you're going to stay with at least one extra pawn. But also look at the black king, you have all these checks. You're gonna win at least one more pawn, G7 or B4. So that would be, maybe Topalov counted on something like this. I don't know if queen C4 check also works, but then king E7 and the king can run to F8. So I think this should be precise. And BC4. But in the game, Anand played king F6, Topalov took on H8, and now what did Anand play here?
Knight D4. Sorry, queen D4.
Yes. So. Yeah, because queen H8, rook D1, that would be just a disaster for black. Rook D6 would be coming, or queen. You cannot use the G pawn to move the king back to G7 because there would be queen B2 check and queen takes queen.
He tries to change the queen with queen D4.
Well, queen D4 is actually, not only about trading queens, but actually is threatening maybe to win the game, to play bishop F5, for example, or queen A1 check and then exchange queen. And bishop F5. So actually,
because the knight
on H8 would be lost. So my impression, but I could be completely wrong, is that Topalov may have missed this queen D4 completely, because when he took on E7, he may only, because this king F6 is already difficult, and of course now he probably thought, okay, if my opponent doesn't take on H8, then it's an extra pawn, and he has his king on F6. So he probably only thought about queen H8, but actually queen D4 is very dangerous. But white is still winning, fortunately. Rook D1, check. So black is trying to give a perpetual check, but white is just running away. And now not king f1, because
Check.
now check and take, and with a queen on e5 instead of h8, this is a very different story, obviously. Now it's very difficult to continue your attack. So white has to play queen e2, but fortunately there is no way for black to trap the knight on h8. And if black goes bishop g4, for example, and now the material is equal, but this is just completely winning for white. Actually, white is just winning the knight by force, because king e5 is rook e6, and otherwise it's gonna be something like this, and you will have big problems to prevent checkmate. Yeah. So Adam did not play bishop g4 check, he played knight f5 instead, preventing rook d6, but now the knight just went back, and that was a very healthy extra pawn for white, and well, that's it. Topalov then went on to win. The rest is not that interesting. So that was a typical Topalov game, full of inspiration. It was not perfect, but full of inspiration, definitely. So let's see one more game full of inspiration, very similar to the previous one. A very famous game against Kramnik in 2008 in Tata Steel, with of course a lot of background behind that game, because it was just 2 years after their match. Cheparinov was still there with Topalov as a second, and actually Cheparinov found a fantastic novelty for Topalov to play in that game, and that brought him the point. I mean, I remember watching the press conference after the game, and Topalov saying, well, I have to ask Ivan Cheparinov if he has more idea, and he was thanking him a lot and saying, okay, now I'm gonna go out and just enjoy my happiness of beating this guy, basically. So actually this Moscow variation, which has been played thousands of times, bishop e2, bishop b7, this is all theory. And now normally people take on d7. I think that's the main move. Let's have a look at notation, reference. Let's have a look at what people normally do. But yeah, I think knight d7 is the main move.
F4 also?
F4 has been played, I see, by Dolmatov, but now Queen C2 has been played by Mamedjarov. I mean, a few moves have been tried a few times, but the main move is definitely Knight D7. And Black normally takes back with the Knight, Bishop D6. This is a main line. I mean, White has ideas like D5, Bishop H5, sometimes just B3. It's a crazy position, but it's known to be okay for Black if he plays extremely precise. You have to know a lot, you have to remember a lot, but it's supposed to be okay for Black. And Topalov came to that game with a novelty, which was just Knight F7, which was unthinkable at the time. I mean, it's a move that Kramnik had completely missed, because, well, especially by then, chess engines were not like today, because today, if you give that position to a very strong chess engine, it's probably going to show you after I don't know how much time, maybe after 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I don't know, probably it's going to suggest several moves, but it's probably going to say Knight F7 around equal. And then it's very tempting. If you sacrifice a piece and it's around equal, then it's very tempting to do it. But at the time, probably chess engines were just saying that Black is completely winning with an extra piece. So that came as a total surprise for Kramnik. Okay, you have to accept the gift. What else? E5.
Because you want to check.
You want to check, yes. Knight E5. Knight E4. No hurry.
You want to check on this?
You prefer the other check. Yeah. So King E7 was played. It could be tempting to get the King to G8, but actually the problem is with the King to G8, you're sort of now E6 is hanging. I mean, the Queen is coming. The problem is the King on G8 will never be safe. So Kramnik took the right decision here to try to run to the other side. Takes you a bit more time, but if you can reach C7, for example, then your king will be much safer than on G8. Topalov played Knight D6, attacking the bishop, Queen B6, very logical, and Bishop G4 here, with ideas to sometimes sacrifice another piece on E6. Last year, Grichuk played A4 here against Tingliren.
Against
against Ding Liren, best Chinese player, Ding Liren.
Ding Liren.
Yes, he played a4, and that was very. Actually, he almost won the game. At some point, he missed a very clear win, and I think it was a draw in the end. But he played a4, so that means that even today there are still some things to find in that position. But Topalov played bishop g4. Kramnik played rook f8, which is a very logical move. You want to try to hide the king, but you should prevent. You prevent quite a few things here. For example, this is no longer something you can think of as white, because black would simply sacrifice and then rook f8, and again you gave a little bit too many pieces. So rook f8 is a nice defensive move, but Topalov knew it and played queen c2 with the idea queen g6, attacking there and there. And Kramnik blundered, which is very understandable, and took on d4, which is the most human move, but actually then the computer showed that the only move for black is to play rook g8. Prophylactical against queen g6. If queen g6, you now just defend the e6 pawn with knight c7. And for example, actually this has been played later, because obviously then people started to repeat knight f7. And there was a game played later by Sandeepan, I think. It went like this. Now this is very bad for black. Queen d6 check coming, knight d5 is queen e6, that would be very bad for black, but cd4. So players were just following the computer line, and even then black blundered with d3, and white blundered again with rook d3. Probably he thought he's winning here, but knight c5, a5. That was a crazy game, but actually here black is fine. He's gonna play b4 on the next move.
Why not now?
Not now, because I think, well, it might be possible, but I would have said queen takes d3, but let's have a look. Yeah, queen takes d3 and queen d6 simply, and well, it's not 100% clear, but you're collecting you're collecting a piece, and then you're an exchange down, but you have a pawn for it, and not any pawn. You have a pawn on c7. So that's why rook d8 is a very strong move, and actually it was played in the game, and black wants d4 next, and actually, although the engine says the position is still unclear, it is actually not very difficult to play a move as white, since b4 is coming, and white lost this position very quickly. And actually d3 was a mistake because of b3. Simply b3 to just play queen b4 check, to just just to take on c4. Just simple chess. So instead, black should have gone knight d5, attacking the knight on b7, and if knight d6, now d3, and there are differences. Now if b3, maybe knight c3 or knight c5, stuff like this. There is also no queen b4 check anymore. But anyway, this is another game. Let's have a look at Topalov Kramnik. So Topalov played queen g6, attacking g7 and e6. Queen takes g4, queen g7, king d8, knight b7. So now white already recovered this piece. King c7 would have allowed knight c5. That's why I went to c8. And now Topalov just played a4. He's not in a hurry to play knight d6, since for the moment king b7 there would be queen d7. Black played b4, not to open the position. Rook c1, threatening to take on c4, and then knight d6 check. c3, bc3. Black played b3. He does not want to open the t-file. If knight e3, there would simply be queen e7 attacking. Not attacking b4 right away, but I guess I mean, I guess maybe a simple straight would be h3 and then e6 would fall.
The queen on
E6 or b4.
The queen on e7 or d6 is more useful.
Yeah, exactly. And knight e2 checking h1 you don't care, because if knight c1 rook c1 then you have a very strong attack. So bc3 then would be possible, but white could simply play like this, and for example the engine gives very nice lines like this that are just very good for white. So Kramnik decided to play b3, c4, rook g8, knight d6 check, king c7, queen f7. So black is trying to give a perpetual check on the white queen. And here Topalov could not prevent himself to sacrifice even more, and he sacked his queen. cd5. No, knight e8 against the king would just move. Actually, h3 would have been a very simple win here, because if the queen moves, then you take on e6, and if takes, then takes, and you attack on d5 and you attack f7. That would have been a very simple win, but probably too simple for Topalov, who probably wanted a brilliancy prize and played cd5, which is very interesting though. But black here, actually Kramnik played rook e8, which is a very human move. Instead, he had only one way to save himself. Can you find it?
Maybe e2, pretending to move queen e2 or something like that, or change one rook on c8.
If rook c8, I guess then d takes e6 maybe, and then e d7 and e6. So b2, that's almost right, but that's actually not the right move order.
First queen e2. No,
Yes, exactly. Queen e2 would have saved the game. Actually, it's threatening not b2, because b2 you give time for rook b1. You take the threat is to take on f1.
Yeah.
And actually probably the best for white here would be something like this. And black goes to queen, but for actually it looks like a win for black, but it's not a win. For example, something like this, and the d7 pawn is untouchable because of e6. And e6 check, I mean d8 is threatened, e6 check as well. So actually the best for black here would be to give a perpetual check. But queen e2 would have saved the game according to the engine. Instead, black played here, white played knight d6. The rook moved back, rook c4, just to get the queen away from g4 and take on e6. Now there is no queen f1 anymore, since there will be rook b4 always. Knight b6, rook b4, king a8, e7, knight e5, white simply took, takes, rook b1, knight d5, just h3. I mean, now white is just having it's not about compensation, it's just fine. I mean, it has a rook, bishop, and 2 pawns for the queen, so that's more than enough already. And it's h5, so black tries to counterattack. Knight f7, attacking the rook, e6, threatening mate on b8, and white just collected the pawns. Now he didn't want to allow knight f4 or things like that, he wants to keep the bishop on this diagonal. Rook b2. Just Topalov sometimes knows to play simple moves, just to get the queen away from the e5 and play e7, so black cannot take on g5. Knight f6 was played, bishop e5, knight d7, and now very nice finish, knight e6, and it's a checkmate. Yes. So
No work.
not a perfect game since this queen sack wasn't precise, but still definitely full of inspiration and definitely one of Topalov's best games. So I think we'll stop here.
Nice. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed the games. Thank you, everyone.